A very good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. My name is Nicholas Reid from Reid Corporate, and on behalf of Besra Gold, ASX code BEZ, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this shareholder webinar. Well, Besra has been through a period of significant change over the past few months, following the appointment of a new board of directors at a general meeting of shareholders in June. This new board, which brings significant mine development expertise, has initiated a wide-ranging strategic review of the company's flagship Bau Gold Project in Sarawak, Malaysia, and earlier this week announced an updated mineral resource estimate of 2.28 million ounces of contained gold. Well, we're very pleased to launch our very first Besra shareholder webinar and to engage with everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. We've had a tremendous response and a great audience who have tuned in. And we're very pleased to have Besra's Technical Director, Matt Greentree, who joins me today. Just a reminder that we'll run through a quick discussion and a quick Q&A about the announcement this week, and then we will open the floor up to questions, and we'll also deal with questions that have been emailed into us beforehand. If you are online and you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A tab, which is on the right-hand side of your browser, and send those in, and I'll put them to Matt once we've finished up our quick chat. Matt, great to see you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Perhaps if we could start with, if you could give us a quick introduction to yourself and the other new board members who have joined recently, and how you came to be involved with Besra.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. Look, we were recruited independently to come in, I guess, and help solve some problems with Besra. There was a lot of, I guess, instability at board level, and the view was to take the project and the company forward. We needed some experience in both mine development and geology and on the corporate side. So John, David and myself sort of fill those three main categories that you need for a successful junior mining company. David is got a lot of corporate experience with the junior sector and mining contracting firms. John himself has had a wealth of experience through Newcrest, a lot of joint ventures in Indonesia itself, and also with Agincourt as a director there. So we've got a team that's built mines, run mines, and financed in the junior sector. So I think with the three of us there, this initial period was really to settle the company down, work out what the Bau project actually represents. And the first part of it is this resource update. When I came into the company, putting my geologist cap on, looked at what was going on with the resource, and it had been sitting there for a while, and I think it got a bit stale. A lot of the people who'd worked on the original resource had left the company, and there was no one taking ownership of the resource itself. And I guess that's where some red flags start to come up, and we go, well, look, what we need to do is establish what we're working with before we start really getting down the pathway of engineering studies and feasibility studies and taking the project forward. So that's, I guess, where this was initiated. We've also got MineScope looking at these studies, and that announcement will come out in the coming weeks, and we're working through that at the moment. So really the focus of today is this resource update.
Thanks, Matt. Well, look, perhaps let's dive into that, because that's obviously the subject of this week's announcement. You announced an updated resource, which was a decrease on the previous estimate. Can you talk us through that announcement a little bit, and will perhaps also give us some insights into why the resource decreased?
Okay, there's a couple key points here. This one was the first independent resource. So Lynn Weidenbach had come in. He'd already looked at Juukan and put out a resource update in late March. That already had reduced the resource, but the global resource hadn't been re-announced with that number incorporated in it. Part of that change was really a change in the extraction methods, going from a large open pit to a smaller open pit with an underground component. So that was one of the main changes with Juukan. But we also then engaged Lynn to look at all the other parts of the resource. No one likes to go down, but we also need to be fairly truthful with ourselves and with all the stakeholders. And parts of it, we noted there was two resource areas that were excluded entirely. One was now under some urban development, and another was in the considered national park. So the reasonable chances of mining those is next to zero. So best to exclude them now and focus on the areas we have got. Likewise with Bekajang, that was reduced as well because some of the areas had encroached around that. Although there's some very good parts of that resource, that's getting more constrained by that development. Areas like Pedgeroom, it's all inferred, but some of that inferred material was based on very few drill holes and extensions were maybe sitting on 1 or 2 drill holes per line. Lynn wasn't very comfortable with that, so we've excluded those for now. And those sort of areas are places that in future drilling campaigns will go and test up, and it could be seen as a growth opportunity. So what we've done, we've reduced the resource, we've been honest with ourselves, and we've cleared out some of, I guess, the fog of all these ounces, but now actually looking at what's material and how we're going to take the project forward.
Thanks, Matt. So look, this update was completed as part of a broader strategic review of the Bau project. Can you give us a quick snapshot of what that review entails and where it's up to at the moment?
Yeah, so one of the critical paths for the whole project is permitting. Some of our major mining concessions expired late last year. There have been in a review process since that time with the Sarawak government. That timeline is a little bit, I guess, undefined, mostly because of the Mining Act there, and that Mining Act is actually in the process of being renewed itself. So communications with the department itself that handles the mining lease applications, but also through to the Premier's level, really giving that message that yes, it's in progress, but bear with us, we're working on some changes there. So our view is that yes, we'll see it renewed, but it really is in the hands of the state there.
Okay, thanks very much. So the board's recently been to site to not only visit the project, but also engage with key government and community stakeholders. Can you give us a quick snapshot of how that visit went and also how your engagement is going with government and community over there?
Look, I think the government and the community up there are very engaging. I think there'd been a bit of a vacuum from some of the previous board not being present, and we've really tried to change that and show our faces. We've been there twice as an entire board over the last 6 months. David's actually was up in Sarawak this week attending a symposia there for development and met with some of the key members of government in that period as well. So I think that's, again, really being present, engaging with these people, building relationships. That's aside. We've also spent a lot of time understanding the project, the lay of the land, some of these challenges with the urban development. Kuching is a growing city in Asia. It's the closest to the Bau project. And I think we've got to have that sensitivity, building a major resource project in close proximity to that sort of urban development. So that's been all important. Our last visit was combined also with technical visits with Lynn Weidenbach. They're looking at the geology, and we also brought the Minescope guys up there who are looking at the I guess, pathway through to development. Okay,
fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Well, look, we might dive into some questions now because we did get a lot of them. So let's move through them. Firstly, we had a number of questions emailed through. A shareholder here who was one of the original shareholders just firstly said he'd like to thank the new team for the hard work you've been doing, undertaking this review of the resource by a third party. And he hopes that you'll continue to work with the same passion and dedication and integrity. I'm sure you will. But look, let's get to his questions. He says, firstly, the agreement that Besra made with Quantum was a masterstroke, even though it has not eventuated fully, and unlikely that Quantum will be able to provide us with all the funds committed. Besra will need funds in the future for exploration and development. So I wonder if the company is exploring opportunities to look at similar agreements with other potential investors and partners.
So at the moment, we've really turned down the taps in terms of expenditure. So we're really constrained and cleaned up a lot of the company's outflows. So we're retaining a good cash balance that will take us through this review process. So there's no immediate need to go out and raise money. The view, though, going forward, look, these agreements are available, and we'll look at those sort of opportunities alongside all other avenues of raising capital for the company to take this project through and the company in the future. So yes, we are open to it. We also don't want to put impediments in front of ourselves as well. So having to look at that, I guess, with a balanced view.
Thanks very much, Matt. Next question here from this gentleman was, is the team exploring for opportunities for potential antimony on the tenement?
We haven't done any direct exploration or work on antimony. I know it's become of interest recently, and these sediment-hosted gold deposits have, I guess, a range of co-products potentially. So that's something, no, we haven't. I always go into any resource project not just looking for the primary commodity, but is there opportunities to make money out of other things that we may be mining alongside it? So that's always in our thoughts. How do you make more money out of the same dirt if you can? So that's a good question. The answer's at the moment, no. Really just trying to understand the gold component to the project.
Thanks, Matt. There's a question specifically here on the mining permit. With the review of the resources of the project and other discussions or negotiations that you may have had with the Sarawak government, can you share what your experience has been about interaction with the government so far? Are they sounding more positive or supportive than before? And have they given you any insights into when that permit might be granted?
Look, the first part of that question is easy to answer. We don't have a clear view on timing. We do understand that there are changes happening in the legislation, and we believe that's part of the reason for some of these delays. So that's all we can do is provide the information that's requested, and we've had several information requests over the last 6 months. But to answer your question, we don't actually have a clear timeline. So that's why we've scaled back some of our expenditure and keeping a control on costs. And really just working up in the background, things like the strategic review, understanding where the resource at, understanding where the study's at. So when we do get this renewal, we have a very clear line of sight to what we need to do next.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Exploration potential is the next question. With what we have left following this resource review in the land holding, do you believe there is potential to expand the resource in the future? And do you have a time frame for further exploration activities?
So we took quite a lot of resource out of this, partly those areas that were excluded through either urban development or changes such as the national park. Areas like Pedro, we reduced because we didn't have the confidence in the drilling. So one of the ones that I am excited by is Pedro. I see that as a growth opportunity there. I think there's a lot of open ground there. You don't have the impediments of urban development. So that's one I think is exciting. It's just under 1 million ounces at the moment and could be a lot larger. Going back to, I guess, more of a philosophic view of it, these systems tend to be fairly large. It's a very extensive corridor of mineralization, close to 20 kilometers long. These sediment systems, like you see in Nevada, I've worked on very similar systems in southern China. They tend to be big, contain a lot of gold, not particularly high grade. You've got some challenges with the metallurgy, but once you overcome those, you can have a fairly significant mineral project. So yes, I have a strong view that there's an exploration upside. In terms of timelines, I think really making sure you've got critical mass for development is the first tick. And once that's been ascertained, you continue exploration alongside it because you want to keep that mill, once you've built it, running as long as you can. So there will be, I think, once in operation, there'll be a continued exploration, but you don't finish exploration as such to get started. You get going with, I guess, a minimum hurdle in terms of your resource reserve position.
Okay, thanks, Matt. There's another question here about timeframes for development and commissioning. Once the mining permit is granted, do you have a time frame as to when the pilot plant could be commissioned, and when could you foresee the project operating fully as an operational mine?
Part of that's probably, those answers will come a bit more with the mine scope review. So their brief was really to peel back and have a look at the studies themselves. Now, those studies are probably not as advanced as we thought. We are really looking at them very critically, and some of the changes in the resource base will have an implication for that as well. So maybe just hold back on that before I answer to, I guess, definitively. Typically, to build a project, though, once you've completed your studies, is probably about 2 years. So it's plus. So we've still got a little way ahead of us to get this thing up and built.
Thanks, Matt. There's another question here about permitting and mining lease renewals, which I think you've covered off on, but there's a follow-up question. I believe that Sarawak will be introducing a new environmental-based mining policy in 2026. Do you envision any problems with that restricting your development, and is there a chance that more of the lease is taken for the national park?
I haven't seen any changes to legislation yet. We will operate to international standards, so I don't think it's going to have implications that would be detrimental to the project, as we would have taken it forward anyway. So that's, I guess, the answer in short. Will it impact the footprint of the project? It could do, but until we understand any changes to the legislation, it's very hard to answer that question.
Okay, thanks, Matt. There's another email question here from a shareholder. Would it be possible to have an update on the current status of the GPA, that the GPA being the gold purchase agreement, I'm assuming, and is that still in place?
Yes, it is still in place. As I said earlier, we've got sufficient funds for the work we're doing at the moment, so there's no need to draw on that. Knowing that you're forward selling gold, you don't want to put impediments in front of yourself unless you need to later down the track. But yes, that's obviously something that we're reviewing as well as part of all our work, is how best to fund the project going forward.
Excellent. One final email question before we go to the online questions. The question is that with 16 million Australian in cash, that would have been your last published cash balance, I think. What sort of drilling campaign can shareholders expect to see over the next year?
I think really the biggest one and the elephant in the room is really when the permits are going to get released. Obviously, that's still a reasonable bank balance to get moving. Part of that will be taken up by any further study work, but we will continue to expand the project as we see fit. And I think places, as I've alluded to before, Pedra is one of those areas that I think is got some areas that we see as opportunities for growth. So yes, that there is real growth potential here.
Thanks, Matt. We'll jump into the online questions, and there's a couple of questions here, and just a reminder to everyone to use that Q&A tab if you'd like to fire a question in to us now. There's a couple of questions going back to the board's experience, which I'd just like to revisit. You did touch on that. That was the first part of our discussion, but the questions are really around the experience of the team in taking exploration companies through to operating mining companies and building big and operating big projects. So perhaps if you could talk us through that in a bit more detail, between yourself, your experience, David Izzard, the chair, and also John Blake. I think it might be worth elaborating a little more on that, and particularly, that specific expertise,
Yeah.
both commercially and technically.
Yeah, look, I guess the last role I had was as managing director of Bau Gold. That's a development company. I've taken that from early exploration through to into a definitive feasibility study. So a lot of experience in that process and building a very large resource base there. It's over 3 million ounces. Before that, I was working for 11 years with SRK Consulting. So a lot of experience across different disciplines, working on feasibility studies, working on building up, I guess, the corporate experience for a company as well. So there's, I guess, a fairly diverse background there. And prior to that, I did a PhD in geology, working in southern China. So I've got a bit of experience in Southeast Asia as well. So understanding, how to operate in these areas, looking at very similar styles of deposits as well. So, from the exploration through to that development phase, I think, I've got depth of experience there, as well as the corporate experience of taking a junior company through those steps. Well supported, and we're working closely as a team. David Izzard has got the corporate experience. He's worked with mining contracting firms as well as in the junior space, building up projects, listing them on the ASX, and building up that corporate side of the company. John Blake has really got a depth of over 25, 30 years experience in mining, a long time with Newcrest, working on various joint venture projects in the Indonesian side, particularly, and also with Agent Corp, where he was a director, and they developed the Matabi project. So I think on those 3 disciplines, definitely strong board experience. Not to say that we won't start building up our management team alongside that, who will also fill those roles as the company expands. But at this stage, keep it tight, work out really a strategy for the company, because I think that was the missing piece here, that company went down one direction and probably lost sight of those goals. So we've pulled it back a bit. We've instigated these review processes to really understand the asset, and then a view to take it forward. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a little bit hard talking about someone else's CV without having them in the room, but I can tell you, getting to know both David and John has been a pleasure. They're very good operators and a wealth of experience there.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be doing more of these in the future, and hopefully we'll get them involved. And I think John's experience in operating Malaysia is obviously extremely relevant there. There's another question here just about the AGM. Will it be held in Perth, and do you have any indicative timing on that?
I think the timing has been put out, and it's in early December, but I don't have the exact date at the top of my head.
Great. Yeah, that'll be no doubt.
Yeah,
notified through the normal channels. Okay. Just looking through some other questions that have come in. Have you completed the environmental study for this project yet, the EIA?
There has been a fair bit of work gone into those EIAs. Again, that's sort of sitting on the mine scopes review tick list. And once I've got through that, then we'll make that, I guess we'll put out another announcement to take you through that as well, where we actually see the project sitting. There has been a considerable amount of work there, and not the last trip, the trip prior to that, we had the inspectors come through from the Sarawak government as part of that process.
Yep. Okay. Let's have a look here. So there's a question here about expenditures. Can you explain the spend of 6 million over the last quarter? And also, why did you feel the need to get an external company to review the opportunity? Is that not something you could do yourself?
So I guess that last question in terms of the opportunity being the Bau project is my assumption. Look, I think, sure, we could have done it ourselves, but I would have thought for all stakeholders, it's better to get unbiased, independent view on that. In terms of the resource estimate, I'd always recommend companies taking an independent view, or at least an audit of the resources periodically, and I think that's what we've done here. With MineScope, the team that's worked with Michael Davies has got particular expertise in dealing with refractory ore bodies. These are complex processing routes, and they do need that expertise. So it's not something that you do on the back of a napkin. It's very, very detailed work, and you need people who have done it before, and that's what we've employed. And probably answering the question before, the last one is, in terms of the board experience, yes, we've got the experience to ask the questions when we don't know the answer. So that's, I think, an important part of that.
Thanks, Matt. There's a question here if you can clarify Dato Lim's current shareholding in the company.
I don't know the number of shares off the top of my head, but I understand he's the 30% shareholder.
Okay, so the question is, does he have 80 million shares or 120 million shares?
I presume it's the larger of the two, and he's clarified that in the public, so that's our understanding.
Okay. Is total cash, including working capital, approximately 21 million? That's not the current figure, is it?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, so there was approximately 10?
That's correct in the last quarterly.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any outstanding litigation that the company faces, or ongoing litigation?
I think we've cleaned up several of that litigation. The company directly, I don't think so, but the previous board, definitely there is litigation ongoing. We're not involved with that directly.
Okay. Did we talk about the expenditures last quarter? A couple of questions about that.
Look, I think what the three of us have been doing is really going through making sure that we minimise the expenditure in this period while there's uncertainty around the licensing. Some of the expenditure that you would have seen in the last quarterly was, I guess, the previous quarter coming through. So there's still a bit of flow on over the past period, but we have made some major inroads in there. We've managed to sublease the Melbourne office, which was slightly extravagant and unnecessary. And we've also started to move on a number of other actions as well to minimise the cost, both in country and at corporate levels.
So presumably there's a lag effect there.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
It takes a while for obviously changes to be made.
Yeah.
There's a question about, can you share anything on latest corporate appointees within the Besra management team?
Look, there hasn't been any appointees at the moment while we've been undertaking these reviews.
Okay. And let's have a look here. So there's a question about, do the directors intend to buy shares in the company?
Look, we're actually in a period where we can't buy shares because of the reporting. Look, I tend to buy shares when it's a project I believe in and ready to go, and that's me speaking personally. I can't speak for the other directors, but I'm sure they will if that's their view as well. But again, can't speak for them. We've been in a period where there's been a lot of material information that's precluded us from going on market.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. To what degree does the sublease minimise the lease expense? Why not just relocate?
Well, we've done both. So we've relocated our office and just renting a shared office space in Perth for the corporate team. And the sublease is Melbourne's just been leased out at cost. So it's basically zero it out for the company.
Excellent, thank you. There's a question here about what's happening with the outstanding lawsuit with CUST. Why has this not been addressed?
Look, that's against former directors. So the reason why it hasn't been addressed is between Cust and Co and those directors. So I can't really speak to that because I'm not involved in that.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. All right. Look, I think we've covered. I've attempted to cover most of the questions there, including the overlap of a few there. There's a couple of questions here. I think it might be worth just wrapping up on this one to give shareholders a sense of. I mean, you've given a sense of what the broad strategy is, but clearly you've taken this on because you believe there's some value in the project, in the asset, and the company moving forward. So maybe if you could just sort of give us some thoughts on why you guys got involved and
Sure.
what the opportunity is. I mean, there's obviously things to clean up in this company. That's clear from a lot of the questions coming in. But at the end of the day, I suppose as investors, people want to know that there is an investment proposition moving forward.
No, that's fair enough. Looking at the company from the outside, it was quite intriguing that you had this large resource base and potential sitting at a micro cap level. I guess part of that, just looking from an external point of view before I was a director, thinking that there was very poor communication and really there was some answers to be held here. Now, the Bau Project's been known about for a long time. It's a large mineralized system, and that, excites the geologist in me. I think a lot of the majors globally have looked at the Bau Project as a potential, but I think moving it forward really takes a systematic view of understanding the geology, working through getting those hurdles for development, and some of those key pieces are missing at the moment, but we're working towards that with this review process and really putting a strategy forward. So I guess the investment proposition is looking at the project objectively and working a pathway through, if there is one, to development rather than anything else. Going back to, I guess, putting on, more of a geologist cap, these projects tend to be large, and that's exciting. And I think that should excite shareholders as well.
And just in the vein of looking forward, Matt, there's a lot of questions here, so I'm just trying to summarise some of them. The key catalyst moving forward, in your view, is permitting in terms of a de-risking event for this.
I think as a de-risking event, absolutely. I think by the AGM, definitely we'll have clarity on the board's view of the project and where we're at today. Fingers crossed we have some resolution on the permitting. I can't guarantee that though. That's beyond my pay grade. Really, it's really a political decision in the end. But I think we're doing the right things, engaging with the government, being visible in country, really working on that on a day-to-day basis, as well as getting our house in order in terms of disclosure, understanding obligations there, and really getting in front of other shareholders as well. So I expect to see a lot more of us. I know we've been a bit quiet while we've sort of hunkered down and really sort of pulled apart the resource and the studies work, but you will see more of us, and we'll start to inform investors about where the project's at and what we're up to.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to wrap up. I think, Matt, we'll do more of these clearly, but there's a lot of news flow to come in the coming weeks, or a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks and months. So maybe just let's wrap up. If you just give us a few thoughts on what we can be looking out for in the coming period.
Yeah, so the review of the studies, the mine scope work, they'll be coming in the next week or two. Give us 2 weeks really to get through this. This resource one took longer than I thought as well. So, but that's coming shortly, and I think that's an important one to really start to reset the clock and understand where the project's at. We're working towards obviously getting that better engagement with government and hopefully seeing an update on the permitting situation as well. So they're 2 key events I expect to see in the next little while.
Excellent. Look, thanks very much, Matt. In the interest of time, we will sort of wrap it up there. Apologies if we didn't get to all the questions, but as we said, we'll get you and the other guys back on here in the near future as some of these milestones unfold. So thanks for coming out and joining us this morning, and we look forward to keeping everyone informed through these channels about Besra's progress in the coming weeks and months. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.